The deal. You already know how.
Well, good evening, good morning for me, good evening for you. Um, I'll give it a few seconds. Maybe I should go live on Instagram as well to work on that live shot and following. I'm going to make sure I'm up on Facebook. I am Dr. Tori J. Yeah, I see it, I hear it. No problem with volume. I am up just to have this conversation. I was supposed to have a fatherhood call, but none of the dads showed up. They were all busy tonight. So that's one thing. I want to talk to you guys about something that had been on my heart a little bit. I did a post on it. People were like, wait a minute. So I knew that it was time to have this conversation, but I'm going to be honest with you. Um, Hi, Eva. I definitely recognize that there are so many facets and tentacles, as I call them, to fatherlessness. Some of you need to breathe and calm down. We are not going to talk about parental alienation the entire time. There are so many different things happening amongst fatherlessness. We've got to do our best to cover those topics and have real conversations around those topics, even if it doesn't, or let me say it this way, if it doesn't um, impact you in that way, it's okay. You don't have to get irate. You don't have to get upset. You don't have to, kind of throw this temper tantrum about that. It's a patriarchal system. That's the root, period. Mm, in some ways, yes, but we can talk about that as well tonight. I'm okay with that. But we get really, some of the individuals get really irate, and I get that you've been oppressed and all of these challenges that exist, and I get it. But I'm going to cover, and my team who posts for us, we're going to cover all the facets. And so if on today or tomorrow there's a post that you do not like, and it does not represent you, and you do not believe in it, and it's all about parental alienation for you and courts and Title 4D, I need you to just scroll past that and just breathe, okay? So let me see. I am going to do live on here. I might as well do this live just because I do believe this is necessary for all parties involved. I do. I do believe this conversation that we're going to have tonight is imperative to anybody who grew up fatherless, anyone who has dealt with fatherlessness. I want to have a conversation around carrying our mother's emotions. I did a post a little while ago, and I guess I probably should pull the post up. Um, I said, many of you are carrying around your mother's emotions concerning your father's, and you don't even know it. And people are like, wait a minute, hold on. It's a problem for individuals, and I get it. I get that you have a problem with that. I get that that's a struggle for you because you don't realize the dynamics that are sometimes, majority of the time, set up when you grow up in a fatherless home. You don't realize that your mother puts you in a position of adulthood, or the child who's the oldest, they become parentified, they become the surrogate spouse, they become the individual who takes on the emotional baggage of the mother. And I need you guys to hear me when I say some of you are still carrying that baggage pertaining to your father. Some of you are still walking around with that in your head. I'm going to walk through a couple of things tonight. I'm going to walk through how our parents, from the time we are babies and we are infants, we're picking up cues and taking cues from our parents. I'm going to talk to you about emotional incest, surrogate spouse, enmeshment, covert incest. We're going to talk about these things tonight because some of you are still dealing with these things. Some of you have no clue that it's even a problem because for you, it seems like your family is very close. But there is a situation where your closeness lacks boundaries. Your closeness lacks um, it lacks boundaries. Can I just stop right there? Your closeness doesn't have any boundaries attached to it. And that becomes really some of the part of the biggest issue when it comes to what you're dealing with. And before, I don't want to get too crazy into this conversation, but if you know someone who you believe would benefit from this conversation, I need you to share it with them. And if you are watching this conversation in replay, um, either see, that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're not talking about anti-constitutional. We're not getting into that because once again, I'm sorry, those who are on Instagram, there are multiple things happening. I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but that's not the conversation tonight. I need you to go back like two, no, no. um, many of the followers and the conversations around fatherlessness, many of you don't even know the root in which it started. Many of you have no clue, and you say things like anti-constitutional. I'll give you that. You say things like it's rooted in patriarchy. Absolutely not. It's rooted in racism. Just to help you out. It's rooted in racism. That's where it's rooted. And that's not where I'm going tonight. I don't want to even get to the foundations of fatherlessness tonight, but it's rooted in racism, Eva. And if you can't, and it says kids can't carry any baggage from anyone. Absolutely, they do. They do. And psychologically, and all of that proves it. So that's where we're going to go tonight. So carrying our mother's emotions about our fathers, I want to talk to you about emotional cues. We often think of children as just babies and, they learn through certain aspects of, we put little toys up and they colors and sounds, but we need to really recognize that babies are truly capable of learning and picking up on subtle cues from their parents' emotions. It's that aspect of which, can an infant really be sensitive to a parent's emotional cues? Can they be sensitive even from the womb to depression, to anxiety, to frustration? The answer is yes. And so from birth, infants, and even before birth, infants are picking up on most emotional cues from others. And very much so, infants look to their caregivers to determine how to react to given situations. Okay, this is where I'm laying the foundation as to how we begin to carry our mother's emotional baggage concerning our fathers. Okay, let's see here. And so as we deal with this, and I'm seeing your conversation, Eva. I want to lay the foundation and then we can come back to some of that. You've got to recognize that babies look to their parents for the emotional responses to help them be able to interpret and react to the world around them. And so if I'm picking up on that, and if that's how I was raised and I'm developed in that situation, I'm developed in an environment where I have one parent, or I had two, but now I only have one. Now I have to look to the parent that's in the home with me majority of the time on how I'm going to interpret and react to the world around me. How am I interpreting my father leaving? How am I interpreting the world that I now live in with just my mother and my father has left? Or he was forced out. I'll even drop that little nugget in the conversation. I read a study in getting prepared for this. It said infants as young as 1 month old, sense when a parent is depressed, angry, or have anxiety, and are affected by the parent's mood. Now, if a 1 month old baby can be impacted, right, by a parent's depression, anger, and anxiety, and they are affected by the parent's mood, how much more do you think that's going to, or what do you think that will look like in the long run from infancy to toddler to adolescence to teenagers? What do you think that looks like as you're developed in that? As that becomes your world, and then you're learning in that world how to interpret and react to the world around you. You're going to find yourself in a very interesting situation where even your development, even how you are developed is in this, and it's stifled. There's some There's some dysfunction in it. And because this is our world, we don't recognize the dysfunction in it. It's normal to us. It's it's the normal way of living. It's the normal way of being. This is what fatherlessness does. Because there's some things I'm going to talk about here in a moment that's going to really shed a light on how we got here. Now, I will tell you, I was actually about 30 minutes prior to getting on here. There was so much conversation on the Fatherless Generation page, the Facebook Fatherless Generation page, about grief. And here's, I say it all the time, and I'm noticing it in my posts, y'all. I asked the question today, as an alienated father, do you find yourself depressed, having PTSD, or anxiety? And someone even said and or. I'll go with you on that. And or. There can be an and, yeah, a both and scenario. And I asked the same question. As a fatherless child, do you find yourself in depression? Do you find yourself having PTSD or anxiety? Do you realize that the only conversation that took place on the page was around the alienated father? The only one. Those were the only people who commented. No one commented in the fatherless post. You know why? Because too many of y'all still don't know y'all fatherless. Too many of y'all like, I'm alienated. But you never connect to the fatherless child. You never connect to the fatherless child moment, even in your alienation. Interesting to me. It's making me think. Okay. So you can always lean on this place of, I'm an alienated father, but rarely can you go back to the fatherless boy. You can often talk about, I'm a single mother, but rarely can you talk about the fatherless little girl. You're not connecting the dots to the pain and the traumas in your life. And that's something I'm going to continue to help you with and continue to talk to you about and continue to hone in on, because I am noticing many of you have not a clue. You are dealing with the current situation, not realizing it's rooted in your fatherless journey. But because you're oblivious to your fatherless journey, you can't even see the root for what it is. You are still fighting. How are you, men of courage? How are you? You're still fighting what I would say the branches or the leaves of the situation, but yet you can't dig up the root because you're blinded by it or you're oblivious to it. So I just want to throw that out there really quickly. So as we get back to this idea that we are carrying our mother's emotions surrounding, or our mother's baggage surrounding our fathers, I want to talk to you about emotional incest, surrogate spouse syndrome, covert incest. There's multiple names for it. A lot of times we talk about mamas making their sons their husbands, right? Or their boyfriends. But I need you to realize that happens to the girls in the equation too. They become the other spouse. It looks different, but it's still parentifying. It's still the situation where you turn your teenage into your mate, your friend, or your equal, which is known as parentifying your child. And it's also referred to as emotional incest, surrogate spouse syndrome. It is not rooted in anything sexual. So before you go there, because of the terms incest is used, I want you to realize it has nothing to do with anything sexual. It has everything to do with how you relate to one another. The dynamic of emotional incest is that your parents don't treat you as a child, but they treat you as their romantic partner. And instead of providing you with the appropriate conversations, parental guidance, and the help that you need to get your emotions met and developed, they rely on you for those things. So here's a few of the things that I found um, that that really exemplify what emotional incest, surrogate spouse, all of these incests look like, right? They rely on you for the comfort and company when they feel lonely and sad. They actually talk to you about navigating financial situations and concerns. Your daddy don't pay child support. That is parentifying. Your child should never know if the father is paying, not paying, on child support, whatever that is. That shouldn't even be a conversation. Advice on navigating conflict at work or their personal relationships. That's when your parent talks to you about what's happening with your father, with other men in their lives and things of that nature. But majority, it's about your father. And then they rely on you to be loyal to them rather than the other parent. This is where it gets totally complicated. But because many times we want to protect our mothers from the big bad wolf, which in some instances is our fathers, because they left, they broke our mother's heart. Sometimes they were abusive, right? Sometimes they were abusive physically, and children had to participate, fight the dad off, do different things to ensure that mom was safe. That's part of parentifying. And so then, especially the boy child, if he's ever interacted with his father as a man who was abusive towards his mother, you're going to have this on a greater level. And when you have boys in a situation where they become the husband or the man of the house, right? That puts them in a position where they feel it's privileged. They feel like they're in a very special place. Little I get how we get here, you guys. That's why I'm like, sign. I get how we get here. But how do they do that? Eva says a man needs to become a man and a woman needs to become a woman. But how do you do that? What does that look like? Because many don't even know what that looks like. So let's have this conversation. We all have emotions. Absolutely. We are supposed to. That makes us human. Father or mother who needs to involve kids in their trauma must be directed to help before having any contact with their children. Even that doesn't happen because the child is being raised in the home with the mother. They're being raised in the home with the mother. And so, no, there's not prejudice. No, that's Eva. No. Mm-mm. It was rooted in racism. We're going to stick to that. No, we're not putting, this is here. We're going to go today because this is not, no, the child is not being removed from the home and then saying, hey, can you check your emotions and get your emotions in check before you raise this child, mom? No, typically the mother is in a position where she's either left with the child or she alienates the father in order to have the child in the home, or not to have the father have access to the child. I'm sorry. So you got multiple, and those are two things that I'm just talking about. But I need you to get, because I'm sorry, Instagram. And thank you, Lauren. How are you? I need you to recognize that there are so many mothers. We did an interview on one of the mothers that we helped, a single mom that we helped. And one of the conversations she actually had was, Dr. Tori gave me information for my daughters, but I realized later I needed it for myself. How do you raise children when you have yet to become a woman? How do you raise children when you're yet healing and have not healed from the pain of your childhood? So no, Eva, we all have emotions. You're right about that. But there's not going to be a time where we remove children from a home or a situation because their mother's emotions are out of whack. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. And you guys know it doesn't happen. Now, a father, he has to prove and fight and do all of these different things in order to be a man or be a father in his child's life, and all of these different things that exist. And I saw Eva said that this is rooted in patriarchy. I go back to the fact that it was rooted in racism. That's where it is. It's rooted in racism. And you just got to, all you got to do is Google fatherlessness and how it got started. The root of father, the case for the Negroes, welfare system, all of these, it was rooted there. That's where it was rooted. Y'all go, you're going to see my righteous indignation raise up on the It's just not, we've been doing this work now 14 years. I've been doing research. I read research. I know what this looks like. There is, and I'm not saying somebody doesn't know more than I know, but I'm telling you, I am the number one reunification expert in the world. In the world. So I know what this looks like. And I've been doing this a long time. Eva, if they don't know they got bad communication, they're not taking a communication course. And even Bernard says, I've never even thought about this topic. It certainly helps when trying to make sense of unwarranted and unfair rejections. Because most people aren't thinking about this, Bernard, and even Eva's having challenges even understanding this conversation. I want you to realize, and I'm going to continue I'm going to go back to my topic, carrying our mother's emotions concerning our father. Another word that you're going to recognize, some of you recognize from the parental alienation word, is enmeshment. So when we go back to this surrogate spouse, the conversation of emotional incest, and the surrogate spouse is actually a syndrome. It's a syndrome, covert incest. I want you to also, some of you know the word enmeshment, and when you know that word, you get what I'm talking about even more so. So this is enmeshment. Your mother is getting comfort and company from you when she feels sad and lonely. She's getting help navigating financial concerns. And some of you would be like, oh, is she sitting down talking about the bills? No, she's saying, oh, we can't afford this and we can't afford that because your daddy ain't paid child support. We can't do this and we can't do that because your daddy don't pay child support. Like, these are conversations that children are having with their mothers or they're overhearing. But in this case, they're being in the conversation, they in the midst. And then the child begins to get emotions, and now they're carrying the financial weight of the household, angry at the fact that their father doesn't pay child support. And let's even go back to the other part, the comfort and company when the mother feels lonely or sad. Now the child is carrying the weight of their mother's loneliness and sadness, and even feels responsible to be the comfort in the home. Y'all got to hear me when I say this. Advice on navigating conflict at work in their personal relationships. Dad left. Dad may even have a new family, because sometimes men marry faster than the women, right? And so you're in this situation. And when you're in this situation, now dad has a new family. So now you feel some kind of way because, when we go back to what we talked about earlier, from birth, babies are picking up cues. Oh, I don't say anything bad about his father. No, but your body language does, your depression does, your PTSD does, your anxiety does. I never say anything. No, they can feel the temperature shift in the room because from birth they have been navigating and interpreting how to deal with the world around them from you. And so they know when you shift, mama. They know when daddy comes to pick them up, you rolling your eyes or you ain't doing, but you get tense or whatever that is days before he shows up because you know the exchange is about to happen. From birth, says 1-month-old can pick up on a mother's depression, anxiety, and what was the anger. So you believe that your children can't pick up on your emotional cues and then carry them as their own baggage concerning their father, which later becomes a weapon used concerning their own father. Y'all got to hear me when I say this thing is heavy, and it's too heavy for these children to carry. It's too heavy for them to carry. For a fatherless child to be put in this position, in the beginning, the dynamic seems very cool because I'm being put in a place of maturity. I'm sharing closeness with my mother. And then my mother tells me things that adults generally don't share with children. And so I feel special. I feel privileged. I feel all of these things. When in fact, you're being set up for dysfunction. You're being set up for dysfunction. Hold on. I have the parental alienation conversation tonight, but I can't have it fully. The more I hear you, Dr. Tori, the more I'm impressed with your complex understanding of these broken family dynamics. Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate that. I didn't just start this work. I come from this work. Okay. I was parentified. I was carrying my mother's baggage, maybe not concerning my own father, but other dynamics in the situation. I was one who defended my mother in abusive situations. One, I'll say situation. There was one. I didn't like the man from the beginning. I didn't. And then he did something, and I walked my little 14, 15-year-old self over to tell him about if he mishandles my mama one more again, it's going to be a problem. And a 15-year-old should never have to do that, especially, I mean, he was a big man. He wasn't no small dude. And so I have been around this long enough to know what it is and what it isn't. And I can talk about it from many different facets. I don't have a one-sided view. I have multiple layers concerning this. They're going to be. Eva's still having her conversation. Our children can't be around suppressors, period. I really don't care if it's heavy, the baggage. If it's heavy, the baggage we have to find who is bringing the baggage and why is it so difficult. No excuse, ABC, emotional issue not work. Eva, you're going to be out there by yourself tonight, girlfriend. I'm sorry, because it just doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. The goal is not to remove a child from either parent. The goal is for children to have both parents. And if one parent is not emotionally fit or mentally fit, physically fit, we would like for them to get the help that they need. But we're not living in a day and age where that's happening. I have worked with individual in social welfare and CPS. And I remember having one friend I was really close to at the time. She quit CPS because she realized that there was a reunification piece, but it was never with the father. Never. Especially if the father was unwed. It was never a conversation. The conversation was always with the mother, to reunite the mother. So let's give her all the resources. Let's give her all the things that she needs, and we'll just check off the box. Whether it's really done properly, that becomes the question. She quit. Like, I'm serious. She quit. You have seen the suffering from the cold face itself. So sorry. I have, but I need you to understand, Bernard, I've done so much healing work that you're not going to get that tainted conversation from me. You're going to get a conversation that's my goal anyway is for you to always get a conversation that is without bias, without the trauma that is, fully still coming out. Now, I've had moments. I was still working through my mother wound a couple of years ago on my Healing Tuesday. And my God, sometimes you could hear it in the conversation that I was still working through it. That's what it was. So I need you to know that my goal is always to do the healing work so that I can lead you to down the places to healing. So let's talk about this. Let's go even deeper into this conversation of carrying our mother's baggage, right? Carrying that into a relationship. Because what you have to realize is if a child, right, is developed in this, what do you think they become as an adult? Mm. I read this too. So let me add this piece because I just opened up a screen on my computer. I find this extremely interesting. Making a child the stand-in for the spouse you lost, be it through divorce or death, and they only use those two, removal, separation, whatever it is is not unusual. It happens all the time. This is psychology today. From a family systems perspective, this dynamic makes perfect sense. When one member of the system leaves, another one will step in to take its place. This is nature's way of maintaining a sense of balance. The term for the phenomenon is homeostasis. Now if you've taken any science class, we know this term. We know this term. Additionally, nature hates a vacuum. So when a space as large as a mother or a father becomes vacant, something or someone will unconsciously and automatically fill it. If you are in a single parent home, you are the child who fills it. Especially if you're the oldest or you're the boy, you fill it. I find when I read that, I was like, oh, this is getting interesting because it's natural. And that's why it's a struggle to even recognize it, because it was natural for you to step into this space. It was natural. It was natural. It was the balance. It was homeostasis. It was this natural dynamic within your surroundings and within your home for you to step into that place of father or mother. Some of people have grown up motherless, and then someone slides into that space. But here's the challenge. To have a child or to ask a child to play the role of an adult is a burden. What is that? That's baggage. It's baggage. Because we as children, we haven't been developed enough. We don't have the coping skills or the life experiences to know how to deal with the situations that are coming at us. It actually leaves us hopeless, and it leaves us feeling helpless when we can't even manage this. But we think we can. Because we see some level of satisfaction from our mothers. And I'm staying on topic because I want it to be clear that this is the Fatherless Generation Foundation. And I recognize that there are some mothers who are alienated. I recognize that there are some individuals who don't see their children who are mothers. I get it. But I'm the Fatherless Generation Foundation, and I want to stay there. It is insane to think that a child has everything they need to help navigate the situation of being a parent to the children in the home being parentified. They help with homework, they help cook, they help clean. And there's one thing about doing chores, but there's another level in which you do a whole lot of other things. Here is the rub. If I am a child being raised in a single parent home, and I am put in a position where I must take on the role of parent to my siblings, I'm taking on the emotional baggage and becoming the surrogate spouse to my mother. Where's my development? Where are the things that I need? Where are the things that I need to get in order to recognize this? Yeah, adultification, parentification, so cruel and abusive. It definitely is put into the abuse category, Bernard. It definitely is. Where am I getting my needs met? We're not. And so when I look at this, carrying this baggage, this burden of our mother's emotions, and we're put in a role, we're talked to about financial things, we're made to bring comfort to her sadness and loneliness. We're given all of these tasks and roles consciously and unconsciously. And it's a burden. I feel helpless. I feel hopeless. I need for mothers to know in this conversation that when you do this, you trample upon your child's self-esteem and you create issues within their self-worth. And if we look at the dynamic of going from baby, picking up on cues, toddler, those seasons and times where those things are being developed, in adolescence, And then I go through my teenage years and now I'm really in it. By the time I become an adult, I'm missing out on how to relate to others. I don't know. I don't get relationships. I'm rooted and raised in dysfunction. I don't have a self-esteem or self-worth. I'm used to catering to somebody else's needs over my own needs. I'm used to giving um, unhealthy codependency and dependence to someone else other than myself. I've been trained to anticipate the needs of my parent. So then what happens is I'm anticipating the needs of my spouse, even if it's in dysfunction. I did that. There's an impact that being a surrogate spouse and an emotional incest, covert incest, enmeshment, there's an impact it has on our adult relationships. And you have to realize you were developed in this. Your formative years were all developed in this. So once again, it's normal. It's homeostasis. It's brought a balance to your household. But what happens when you leave that household? I remember when I left, it caused, whew, it was like the cornerstone of the house walked out the door and there was a collapse. My brother, my baby brother, felt that. He felt that. And unfortunately, he's still feeling that, and it's impacted our relationship. You have to not do, you can't do this. Some of you are going to have to get your girlfriends on a different level in the midst of this conversation. Bernard says, my God, yes. Why do the family courts not account for the extra burdens placed on the children when they remove a fit and loving father? I don't believe the courts know that. They're not anticipating that. They're not anticipating that. And you have to realize that enough courts are not using therapists, psychologists, and experts such as myself in this space to testify. And some of you, I've been hired to testify as an expert witness in court cases. And when I do, my client always wins. Always. And that's what, and let me say, when I do, because there have been times when I have been hired and the opposing counsel and the guardian ad litem will fight to ensure that my words are never heard. And that's when we lose. When I don't get to speak, we lose. But when I speak, we win every time. We win every time. Because the courts are not hearing this, because some of you are, let's go here. Some of you are not putting yourself in the best position by hiring an expert to testify in your case. If you look at the top of the Fatherless Generation Foundation page, I have pinned it there, an expert witness testimony and how you hire me to do that. I have won cases in Albania. He said, where were you 10 years ago? I needed you in Australian family courts. I was going to say, I'm telling you, I've testified in cases all around the globe. Sometimes it's written testimony. Sometimes it's virtual testimony. In America, I'm being flown to those places and having those conversations and testifying. I even had a case where a mother was trying to move a child between a small town in Pennsylvania to Boston. No flight, 6-hour drive for the child anytime he wanted to see his dad. So imagine being in the car 3 hours there, 3 hours with your mother, 3 hours with your father. And you're doing a 12-hour trek within 4 days. And so we were able to ensure that her relocation did not take place. We were able to ensure that. And what was really insane was they didn't want me to testify. They fought, and the judge was like, oh no, she's been with CASA. Mm-mm. She is testifying. See, I've done the work, you guys. So when I go into a court to testify, I've already volunteered and done things where there's respect and honor, where a judge recognizes that. And let me tell you, I testified in that case. They actually appealed it to the high court in the state, and the high court denied their appeal. And the very thing, let me tell you what they were, the very thing they were attempting to remove from from the order were my words, because the judge and the Superior Court weighed heavily on my testimony. And because he weighed so heavily on it, if they got my words removed, they could then take it to get her relocation approved. The High Court said, nope, her words stay. That's what I'm talking about. So when you guys are asking this question, why don't judges understand these extra burdens that are placed? I talk about the impact of fatherlessness in my cases. And there are a few other dynamics that I can talk about, but dads typically hire me to talk about the impact of fatherlessness. And if a judge asks, I tell my story as well. And there was a case in Wyoming where the opposing party fought and fought. Even the guardian ad litem, which I thought was really crazy. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be the neutral party for the child? He was stomping his feet. And the judge turned to me and looked at me and said, what does it feel like to have people fight not to have you speak? And I said, happens all the time. They were afraid of what I was going to say. And when I say it, how it was going to change the dynamic of their case. Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate that. But let me go back to my topic before we end this conversation tonight. How being enmeshed in a surrogate spouse and emotional incest and parentifying and adultifying and all of that impacts a child in their adult relationships. It fosters unhealthy dependence. How many of you have heard of codependency? Al-Anon. Yeah. I remember being a child and my mother was clearly dealing with some codependency. And it was the first time I became aware of a thing called Al-Anon. And I'll leave it at that. But I was very aware that that was a place that you go to learn to, get unhooked from this codependency you have with your mother, father, parent relationship, whatever that is. The child who is trained, and I'm going to read this. The child who is trained so well to anticipate the needs of his or her parents will, without awareness or intervention, carry this trait into their adult relationships. I want you all to think about yourselves growing up in a single parent home, growing up in a house where your father came here and there every other weekend, because I don't care what y'all say, every other weekend is not enough. Dads feel like visitors and you feel like he's a visitor too. And who you think you talking to? You my daddy, but you ain't around, all of that. Mm-hmm. It's not enough. And so you don't get the time with the other parent who's supposed to develop you in other areas. And then when you don't get the time and the development, you're getting it from this other parent that you feel totally loyal to. And that goes into the loyalty bond as well. And you carrying these traits into your adult relationships. What many of you don't recognize, and I got to tell y'all this. So many of the individuals that are alienating you were alienated themselves. And these traits that we're going to talk about just right here for a quick second, this narcissistic trait, many of you are like, oh, they're narcissists. No, I don't know if that's the case fully, because that's a different level of diagnosis. Although I'm thinking there's a level that is increasing because of fatherlessness, and it's coming to the forefront because of that and because of how old we are. But I need you to realize that some of the traits some of you are carrying in the process of alienating, in your alienating behaviors for the parent who's alienating the father from the child or the child from the father, you brought in your narcissistic mother's traits into the relationship in your adult life. You've brought those traits into your adult life. And let's go here. Have you guys just wondered why narcissism has become like this big topic? It's become a huge topic. I have my suspicions. Y'all want to hear my suspicions? I have my suspicions that because you have to remember fatherlessness started in late 60s, early 70s, right? And then it had this big boom in the 80s and 90s. What's the age group that's now like aging, getting into the midlife? It's the 40 and 50-year-olds, y'all. And we have relationship issues. And this conversation is happening because so many of us were fatherless and we were raised with narcissistic parents who then you couldn't challenge their parenting style. You still can't. You can't challenge their parenting style. If you tell them their children were bad, they would take they would take up for their child and defend the child, and they would have that conversation like, oh no, my child is this, my child. And some of you say, no, I got whooped and yeah, but there were some challenging, if you did something with a basketball, you did something with maybe, or you know what and I'm using basketball as but if someone said your child needs to go to counseling, or your child is bad, or your child is, the mother is typically going to stand in a position of, excuse me, who you think you talking to? How you going to tell me about my child? How you going to tell me what my child is doing? How you going to tell me? And then you defend the child, and I've seen it. Ooh, I want to tell a personal story, but I won't tonight. Sometimes I reveal too much, and I'm not going to tell it tonight. But I need you to hear me when I say a lot of this narcissism and these narcissistic traits, because we all have narcissistic traits. Some of y'all acting like, oh, my narcissistic ex. Yeah, but what happened when they stressed you out? What happened when they frustrated you? Some of your narcissistic traits came out too, right? So when I say we're carrying this trait into our adult relationships, that's just not the surrogate spouse or the enmeshment or the unhealthy dependence, but it's also narcissistic traits. Here's the other thing we carry into relationships. Ladies, as a daughter who is doting and loving and comfort and all of those things to their mother, and then you later become the doting wife, you have a tendency to suppress your own needs and not speak your own truth in your marriage. Then here we go. This leads to your toxic rages or an affair. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. You know what I hear a lot on social media? She cheated. And then she divorced me. And then false allegations. This was just on our page today. It was just on our page today. You can go look at the conversation. A woman who cheats and then she divorces me and does false allegations. I am not with that false allegation piece. I will you tell somebody a man is sleeping with his child, or he abused his child, or he molested his child, and this ain't real. Ooh, you will see a side of me many of you don't want to ever see. And I've had cases like that where it was just to get more child support. She was just trying to get more money. Okay. This is like, I need you to realize the reason she had the affair, gentlemen, is because she was having needs that weren't met, but she wasn't speaking her truth either. And this is why this is why it was such a shock to you. This is why you're like, what happened? What happened? Because you were oblivious to the fact that she had needs that weren't getting met anyway, because she was being doting and loving and caring and nurturing and taking care of the household and all of these things. And you had no idea, because it's rooted in her own dysfunction. It was rooted in her own need to please and people please and all of these things that come up that maybe you had no idea about. And the only reason I'm like mind blown a little bit is because I've heard men say this before. I've heard men say this often. Oh, she had an affair, and then she divorced me, and I realize even saying this now, it was a surprise to you. And this is why it was a surprise. Because ladies, you were taught to suppress your emotions in your dysfunctional upbringing, your unhealthy dependence and enmeshment in your home. And because you were taught this, you didn't even share with your husband your needs. And sometimes you shared, but by the time you shared, he was looking around like, I didn't even realize anything was wrong. I didn't even know we were here. And he couldn't fix it because it was so far off the rails by the time you said anything. He had no recourse. He had no way of fixing it. And maybe it wasn't fixable at that point because it wasn't for him to fix. Mm. It was your own inner work that you needed to do. It was your own ability to use your own voice. You had to go figure that out. And I'll go back to Eva talking about communication. Learning how to communicate. It was up to you. See, so much of this work and why relationships aren't working is because we haven't done the inner work on ourselves. And we think marriage or relationships are going to help and cover that and give us what we need and do all the, no, no, no. Your relationships will illuminate, expose, and reveal the traumas that you have. Your relationships will trigger the heck out of you on a regular basis. And many of you are, oh, you got anxiety and depression. You got all these things that are manifesting in your relationship, and you don't know why. Part of the reason is it's a trigger. Okay, Bernard, you have a good night. He said, this video is so captivating, but I have to go now and hope to continue viewing later. Thanks so much for this enlightening information. Some of you don't realize how much you're being triggered in the relationship because you have unhealed trauma. Our triggers are our teachers. They are telling us where we need work. And some of us need work in healing our enmeshed surrogate spouse syndrome, covert incest, emotional incest situations that we got from our mothers. And I'll even go back to carrying our mother's emotions concerning our fathers. Even the stories you were told about your father has now trickled into how you view men. And that's not just for the ladies. That's for you too. Because men, it trickles into how you view yourself as a man. Some of you men were groomed to be the perfect mate for your mama, and you don't even know it. And you wonder why your relationships can't work. You wonder why every time a woman comes around, your mother got a problem with her. She behind the scenes, she's saying certain things that make you question whether or not she likes her. Because your mama is already your wife. Your mama already want to be you are the man that she groomed to be the best man that she could possibly ever want in her life. And you were it. So she makes the dynamics within your relationships with women challenging. That's a part of the emotional incest. Y'all think that this just happens and then when you grow older, your mother's okay with you going off and getting married. No, you've been her husband this entire time. And ladies, you're going to get some struggles too because you were the support system in the spouse category. But the men, have y'all ever seen those comments on social media? Who gets hugged first? The wife, the mother, the daughter, or the baby mama, or the sister? The reason we have problems with that is because all of this situation that we're talking about, you were birthed in chaos, but yet you expect order. You expect people to understand order. The order of things is the wife is hugged first. If you have a wife, we didn't say girlfriend. If you have a wife, your wife gets hugged first. Your wife gets first picks. Your wife gets first dibs. And for the single mother who's like, my children come first. No, they don't. See, once again, the reason you think your children come first is because you got children from multiple situations, multiple relationships. And so you dare not put a man over your children or pick a man over your children. And because you have birthed these children in chaos, I said it, in chaos, dysfunction, disorder, dependency, emotional trauma, you have no idea the order of things. You struggle with that because for you, the normalcy is the vacuum, homeostasis, fill the gap. I need you guys to hear me when I say this is hurting your relationships. This is hurting your relationship with your father, number one. Let me back up. It's hurting your relationship with yourself, number one. Yourself, your self-esteem, your self-worth, your belief in yourself. You believe you have to be perfect. You have this dynamic, this inner talk and this inner dialogue that I call head trash that you still need to work through. Number two, it's hindering your relationship with your father. Our fathers aren't perfect by no means. I had one when I reunited with my father. I was like, sir, you were not the Superman I was expecting. You were not Jesus in a suit or God in full-blown body that I was expecting. And I had to breathe and recognize he's a human. He's a man. And he comes with his set of flaws. But here's the other part. Learning who your father is as a man, as a human being, not your father per se, helps you navigate life in a different kind of way. It helps you avoid traps. It points you into directions of destiny and purpose. And so I say to you, I know some of you say, oh, I tried to reunite with him, but it was a flop. He was a piece of, and he was this and he was that. And I get it. But there's some of you who haven't even taken the step because you're scared. And I'm having this conversation with you tonight because I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to deal with the things on the inside of you first and foremost. I want you to get the healing and the wholeness that you need first and foremost, because then that feeds into the dynamics within your life, the relational dynamics within your life. And here's the other beautiful part. It could also open the door for some compassion. I feel like pity comes first. Like you're like, dang, they went through some stuff as my parent, as my father, as my mother. Dang. And so you have pity, but then from pity comes this place of compassion. And then compassion brings forgiveness. There's a process. It brings forgiveness. I need you to hear me when I say you're doing this for yourself, or you're doing this for yourself, for your relationship with your father, but also for your relationship with your spouse or your soon-to-be spouse or the spouse you're praying for. You're letting go of carrying your mother's emotions concerning your father, concerning her well-being, or any of those things. Now, what I'm not telling you to do is to dishonor, throw your mama away. I get what honor looks like, but honor does not mean that you have to allow your mother to trample upon your life and the life that you desire. You don't have to allow your mother to take over your emotions and to be, you're not her support system in that way. You're not her support system. That's a tough one. Someone asked me at a conference back in April, how do you talk so freely about this? And, doesn't your mother feel betrayed and blah, 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 all of these things. And I was like, that's between my mother and God. That has nothing to do with me. I don't expose her. I'm having conversations about certain things, but that has not, I'm not carrying that baggage of her embarrassment, her feeling betrayed, her, That's between her and the Lord. Some of you need to let go. It's your time to let go. She's not your responsibility. You don't even have the ability to be responsible concerning her. You don't. Even as an adult, you don't. How do I know that? Because you're still stuck in the childhood space. You're still not developed in this area. You don't have the coping skills, the resilience. You don't have any of that. You're in survival mode, and that is not healthy. When it comes to reunification, I want you to get the healing and the wholeness that you need. I will briefly talk to you about, I do have a coaching program where you can get the coaching and the healing that you need from your father wound. But I'm going to tell you right now, as soon as your father wound is healed, your mother wound shows up. And we go through a book that it takes a little while. It probably takes longer to get through that book in healing the mother wound than it does the cohorts and the modules for the father wound. You can go to beyondfatherless.com and you can go and sign up there if you really need the help. And I know many of you need this help. I know you need the help. I'm typing this in here. And then for those of you who desire to reunite with your father, this is not an easy task, but I need you to know it's doable. And it's something you should be cautious about, but not afraid. I did this work, y'all. I did this. And when I tell you I did this, it wasn't easy, but I did it. Okay. I'm going to give you the link to put yourself on my calendar. So the first one is, it's a coaching package. You can go in, you can purchase that and go from there. This one is putting yourself on my calendar to talk to you about your situation and finding out more about it so that I can determine how I can best help you. Hi, Crystal. Thank you, love. How I can best help you reunite with your father. So just go in, put yourself on my calendar, and we can have a conversation from there. I want to say it's $25, and I do that because some of you put yourselves on my calendar and then don't show up. Let me do the same over here on Instagram. And so y'all have a tendency of wasting my time because either you get nervous and you say, nah, I ain't gonna do it. But then you've taken up a slot for somebody else, right? And so I charge you $25. It goes towards, if you sign up, right, for anything, it'll go towards that. But I need you to know y'all can't keep putting yourselves on my calendar and not show up because you get scared. I'm typing this on my phone for those over here. And I could have pulled this up. Let me pull this up because I don't like doing it. Typing on here is difficult. It's difficult. But I hope you all heard me tonight as I shared something very important. And I pray that it causes you to dig deeper, right? Into your own equation, into your own situation, asking yourself some serious questions, right? You need to ask yourself the question, like, was I enmeshed? Am I having issues? What's this about? I need you to ask yourself those questions, right? Because if you don't ask the question, you're not going to hear the answer, okay? And some of you need really, I'm sorry, I paused the video doing that. Sorry, Instagram, I paused you doing that. But yeah, you've got to ask the question in order to hear the answer, okay? So let's continue to do the work concerning our fatherless journey. And I'm going to get off of here. But if you guys, and let's say you don't want to do any of this, but I definitely am doing work around the world. I am currently in Africa. Partially, you can see the elephant on the wall. I love that picture. Every time I stay at this hotel, I absolutely love that picture. And I'm glad it's in my backdrop. But yeah, I am in Africa planting this work. I am headed home in now what I believe is 8 or 7 days for me. Yeah, because I'm 3 a.m., 7 days. And so I'm really excited about this work that I'm doing. So if you want to donate in any way to help the work that we're doing, sponsor a child in a peer group, go to tfgf.org and you can make a donation there. This work is not just about parental alienation. I have friends in parental alienation. I am doing some research now in parental alienation. So I get it. Trust me, I get it. I am doing these things, but I want you to know this is deeper than that. This is rooted in something so much deeper than that. So I pray that you guys have an amazing night, that this was enlightening, that it was inspiring, and that it got you to a place where you're starting to ask more questions so that you can receive the answers that you need. All right, you guys have a great night. Bye.